The cold, still walls of Cargo Bay 12 whispered of loneliness. Dust hung in beams of synthetic light like frozen sorrow, and in a corner wrapped in a thermal blanket that no longer warmed her sat the girl. Not quite human, not quite alien. Her skin shimmered like pearl under a sea of bruises, her eyes too wide and too old for someone so small. Her thin willow frame seemed folded in on itself, not from physical pain, but from something deeper. Deeper than the void outside the ship. Her name was Ren, at least that's what the last handler had called her before he signed the return form and walked away with shaking hands and empty excuses. Ren had been returned 13 times, not adopted. Not welcomed, not loved. Just processed, evaluated, returned at each family had a reason. She doesn't talk. She doesn't sleep. She stares too much. She makes the other kids uncomfortable. She's not ... like us. No one had bothered to ask her why she was quiet, why she flinched when a plate clattered too loud, why her sleep was haunted by muffled screams in a language only her kind remembered. The file said she was rescued, no. Confiscated from a smuggler ring that had used alien orphans for psychic experimentation. That kind of trauma didn't show up in scans, but it leaked from her in silence, in stares, in stillness. Like a broken mirror that still reflected a soul. They called her defective. The foster system, intergalactic, and sterile had done its job. Saved her body, failed her spirit. No one wanted a girl who never cried, never laughed, never screamed, even when poked with needles during observation. Her handlers told themselves she was being monitored for her own good. They were protecting society. But what did that mean to a girl with no past, no home, no voice? The transport ship she was currently in wasn't a real home either. Just a temporary holding crate in orbit over Mars, awaiting her next placement. Or return. The human guards avoided her. Even the android attendants found reasons to delay food delivery. Not from cruelty, but fear. She was too quiet, too unreadable, too wrong. Then, in the silence of that forgotten cargo bay, something strange happened. She lifted her head, not because someone called her name, no one ever used it, but because she felt something. A vibration, a heartbeat. A mind-close, chaotic human approaching, not with the sterile detachment of a counselor or a soldier. This mind carried warmth, confusion, anger, guilt, curiosity ... and kindness ... the moment stretched. She clutched the blanket closer, unsure why. But her heart, small and damaged, beat a little faster. The door hissed, and for the first time in her life, someone stepped in who didn't wear gloves, didn't hold a scanner, and didn't bring a form marked rejection pending. He was tall, sloppy, unshaven. His clothes smelled of coolant and fried circuits. His boots thudded carelessly, like he didn't care what regulations said about unauthorized contact with special case subjects. He stopped when he saw her, and his eyes, blue and raw, met hers without flinching. And then he smiled, not politely, not nervously, just ... simply, like someone who saw a sunrise instead of a case file. "Hey, kid," he said. "You hungry?" She didn't answer. Couldn't. Her throat was dry. Her mouth never learned the right sounds, but her eyes blinked. Once, and something deep inside her, small, hidden under years of silence and pain, did something terrifying. It hoped. She didn't know it then. Neither did he. But this wasn't going to be another placement, another return, another failure. This mechanic, this human who smelled like engine grease and forgot to wipe his hands before touching the console, he had just changed everything. Not because he had power or permission, but because he looked at her and didn't look away. And in that moment, in a cold cargo bay filled with rejection slips and broken dreams, the story truly began. The story of how a human saw value in what everyone else discarded. The story of how the galaxy's most silent girl was finally heard. The story of how empathy, not worships, would change a life, and maybe save the world. His name was Tom Calder, a mechanic with no medals, no rank worth saluting, no clearance higher than the lowest tier. He fixed broken engines, rerouted faulty coolant lines, and spent most nights talking to machines because they didn't argue or judge. He wasn't supposed to be near Sector 12. That was where the unplaceables were kept, alien children that the adoption network had cycled through too many times. They were files, now problems, puzzles no one wanted to solve. Tom wasn't a man who read case files or believed in fate, but something had tugged at him when he saw the blinking red light outside the bay. A system error, the screen said. Cargo. Integrity compromised. Protocol demanded he log the issue and move on. But he did in single quotes T. Instead. He stepped in and saw her. She didn't flinch when he entered. Didn't speak or move or cower. She just looked at him, her eyes huge and liquid, like the stars had pooled in her irises. And Tom, who'd seen 1,000 strange things in his years on old ships and asteroid docks, felt something strange crawl up his spine. Guilt. Not guilt for something he'd done, but for everything she'd suffered that people like him had ignored. This wasn't his job. This wasn't his place. But something in that girl's stillness whispered, "Please, don't walk away like the others did." Tom crouched slowly, resting his elbow on his knee so he was eye level with her. "Name's Tom," he said softly, scratching the back of his head. "I fix broken stuff. You look like you had your share of breakage." She blinked again. No sound. No shift. He glanced at her tray, untouched protein bar, half-full cup of nutrient gel. Food not good? He tried. "Yeah, I wouldn't touch that sludge either." Still nothing. Tom sighed, sitting fully on the metal floor, his back against a storage panel. "Listen, I don't know what they told you about people like me, but I'm not here to poke or prod or run tests. I just saw the light and came in. He paused, biting his lip. "I don't even know why I'm talking to you like this. Maybe because it's been a while since I talked to anyone who doesn't ask for reports." The silence wasn't empty now. It was listening. Tom opened the small pouch at his belt and pulled out something wrapped in wax paper. He hesitated for a second, then slowly placed it near her, within reach, not too close to startle. "This," he said with a smirk, "is called a sandwich. Real bread, tomato paste, cheese from earth cows. I traded 2 coolant valves and my last pack of gum for it. It's warm, see?" Her eyes flicked to the steam curling off the bread. She leaned forward a fraction. Her nose twitched. Tom didn't move. She reached out, not fast, but with that kind of terrified curiosity that only the broken understand. Fingers delicate and glowing faintly lavender, she touched the bread as if it might vanish. Then, so slowly it ached to watch, she pulled it to her lap. She didn't eat. Not yet, but she held it like it was precious. Tom felt something tighten in his throat. "Yeah, that's yours now. No take-backs. And if anyone tries, you tell them." Tom said, "Screw the protocol." She looked at him again, this time longer. "You know," he continued, "I don't think you're broken. Just handled wrong. Like someone tried to use a wrench to fix a flower." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Still, her breathing changed, slower, deeper. He watched her shoulders relax just a little. He stood, joints popping. "All right, Rin," he said, using the name he'd seen briefly on a label outside the door. "I'll be back tomorrow. If the systems haven't logged me and sent security by then." He gave a lopsided grin. "Guess I'm betting they won't." As he turned to leave, she finally made a sound. Barely a whisper, just air shaped around effort. But to Tom, it hit harder than any speech. Tom. He froze. It wasn't perfect. It was breathy, almost soundless. But it was his name. He turned slowly, like someone scared of scaring away a dream. She was looking at him, sandwich still clutched in her lap, eyes wide but not afraid. Then she did something no file had ever recorded. She smiled. Not big. Not bright, but real. Tom didn't say anything. Just nodded and walked out before the lump in his throat embarrassed him. As the door hissed shut, he leaned back against it and let out a shaky breath. He didn't know what he'd just stepped into. But he knew one thing for sure. He was coming back, again and again, until someone stopped him or until she no longer needed him. And somehow, he hoped that day would never come. Tom kept coming back, each evening, when the engines had cooled and the crew's chatter had faded into mechanical hum. He would find his way to Cargo Bay 12. He never brought forms, never asked questions, just brought little things, bits and pieces of a human life. A radio tuned to old jazz from Earth, a scarf woven from the red threads of Martian silkweed, a small mirror, a wooden puzzle box carved with constellations. And each time, Rin would be waiting, not like a child waits for a parent, but like a starved soul watches for a flicker of warmth in a frozen sky. At first, she wouldn't speak. But she listened. Tom would tell her about his day, the ridiculous repairs he had to do because someone overloaded a coolant pipe trying to microwave noodles. The angry officer who couldn't understand why a ship's AI needed a bedtime routine after a software update. He made her laugh once, though she didn't realize she had. A soft, shaky exhale that caught her by surprise. Her hand flew to her mouth like she had just broken a rule. But Tom didn't tease her. He just smiled and said, "There it is. That's music, that is." She began to respond not in full sentences, but in sounds, in gestures, in trust. When he handed her a harmonica one day, her fingers trembled. She didn't know what it was. But when she lifted it to her mouth and blew it, her eyes lit up with wonder at the sound she'd made. And when Tom clapped softly and said, "That's your first song," she tilted her head and whispered, "Mine?" He nodded, "Yours." And that was the beginning. It turned out Rin was brilliant. She had a mind that moved like water, quiet on the surface, but deep with reflection and impossible currents. Tom gave her an old datapad he'd fixed, and she spent hours exploring it. Not for games, for maps, for languages, for stories. She devoured human myths like they were fruit after a famine. She loved the ones where people weren't the strongest or smartest, but still won because they refused to give up. She asked him one night, barely above a whisper, "Are humans always like that? You fight even when you break?" Tom's smile faltered then, just for a second. "Not all of us," he admitted. "But the good ones do, yeah." She nodded slowly, holding the harmonica like a talisman. It wasn't always perfect. Some days she would go quiet again, curling into herself like she had slipped backward into her old memories. On those days, Tom didn't try to fix her. He just sat nearby, humming low songs, or telling stories about Earth, or just being there. Not everyone knew how to sit beside someone else's silence without trying to fill it. But Tom did, and little by little she changed. She began to speak more. Not fluently, but with intent. She'd ask questions. Simple at first. Why does rain fall? Do stars sleep? What does home feel like? Tom never gave her short answers. He treated every question like it mattered because to her they did. Once, when she asked him why humans cry, he didn't tell her about glands or biology. He just said, "Sometimes your heart gets too full, and the only way to empty it a little is through your eyes." That night, she cried for the first time, and Tom didn't stop her. He didn't try to fix her. He just held her hand and let the silence stretch. The staff noticed. They tried to keep quiet, but systems logged every visitor, and Tom's name had become a constant anomaly. He got warnings, gentle ones at first, then formal. You are not authorized to engage with alien subjects outside of designated therapeutic sessions, but no one stopped him. Maybe because deep down, they didn't want to. Maybe because Rin, for the first time, wasn't flagged as unresponsive. Her log showed improvement, emotional variance, engagement, and it all pointed back to one unauthorized, grease-stained mechanic who refused to leave her alone. But Tom didn't care about their files. He cared about her, about the way she started calling him Tom Man. When she was happy, about how she started decorating her little corner with drawings of stars and suns as smiling faces, about how she'd begun to write slowly names for the things she'd never had words for. One paper simply read, Tom equals safe. Sometimes she'd touch his hand and look at him like she was seeing something rare. Do I belong? She asked once, her voice as fragile as breath. Tom didn't answer right away. He cupped her hand in both of his, looked her in the eyes, and said, You belong more than most people I know. She didn't cry then, she smiled, and for the first time, Tom realized something terrifying and beautiful. He wasn't just helping her heal Dot, she was healing him. Too, asterisk, the days passed like soft tides, gentle, warm, almost dreamlike. But nothing stays untouched in the cold machinery of space. Nothing so pure escapes the reach of systems built on control. Rin had found laughter. Tom had found purpose. Yet beyond the soft lights of Cargo Bay 12, something stirred. An old file opened. A cold voice spoken, a decision made from behind glass walls far from the warmth of human hands. Rin's past, long buried in encrypted reports and black bar, documents had resurfaced. And this time, it wasn't the psychologist or the foster system that noticed her progress. It was defense. They called it a security trigger event, unregistered psychic resonance, emotional projection levels exceeding containment thresholds. They said it was impossible. They said she was dormant, that her kind had been stripped of their gifts long before the smuggling ring was shut down. But on a quiet evening, when Tom showed her a drawing of a tree from Earth and told her how leaves turned gold in autumn, something inside her responded, not in words, not in movement, but in energy, unseen, uncontrolled. Real Dot the sensors caught. It registered as a fluctuation at first, an anomaly in the neural feedback grid, but someone noticed, someone higher up, someone who didn't see her as a child, but as a risk. That night, the door to Bay 12 opened not with Tom's usual gentle knock, but with the hiss of authority. 3 men entered, 2 in black, 1 in white. The one in white held a tablet, his eyes already scanning, impersonal. Rin froze. She had felt them before they arrived, like a storm inside her skull. Fear surged through her body like electricity. She shrank back into the shadows, eyes wide, fingers clutching the harmonica Tom had given her like it could keep the monsters away. Tom arrived late. He'd gotten the notification, Subject 12, assessment in progress, and his heart nearly stopped. He ran. He didn't ask. He didn't think. He just ran. The moment he entered the bay and saw them standing there, something inside him snapped. What the hell are you doing? He barked, stepping between them and Rin. The man in white didn't even look up. This subject has been flagged for high-value reassessment. Emotional stimulation has triggered latent telepathic signals beyond acceptable civilian thresholds. She's not a subject, Tom growled. She's a kid. She's a classified asset, the man replied coldly, and she's unstable. This kind of energy output could breach AI synchronization protocols, or worse, project into unshielded personnel. Rin whimpered, shaking. Her breath came in sharp, shallow gasps. She didn't understand all the words, but she understood the tone, the fear, the disgust. The idea that she was something dangerous. Again, Tom turned toward her, his voice softer. No, Rin, it's okay. I'm here. I won't let them take you. But her eyes said everything. They already have. The man gestured. The guard stepped forward with gloves that gleamed under the harsh light. No words, no comfort, just containment. Just procedure. And then Rin screamed, not a sound, no, not with her voice. With her mind, the lights flickered. The walls shook. Every metallic surface in the room trembled like it was remembering something ancient. The guards staggered back, clutching their temples. The man in white dropped his tablet, eyes wide in disbelief. Tom didn't flinch. He stepped toward her through the pulse of raw energy, through the chaos, and knelt beside her. Rin, he whispered, breathe. Listen to me. You're not a weapon. You're not broken. You're alive. You're loved. Her trembling slowed. The light dimmed. The hum faded. She collapsed into his arms, sobbing not from pain, but from terror, from the weight of finally being seen, only to be turned into something monstrous again. The man in white stood, his voice unsteady. We need to take her into secure isolation? No, Tom said, standing with Rin cradled against him. You're not taking her anywhere. She's a threat. She's a child. He cut in, louder now. And if your systems can't tell the difference between a weapon and a wounded girl learning to feel again, then your systems are the real threat. The room was silent. The guards hesitated. The man looked between them and made a decision. You have until dawn, he said coldly. After that, she's no longer under your station's jurisdiction. Central Command will issue a retrieval order. He turned and left. The guards followed. No more threats. Just the sound of a countdown. Beginning in silence, Tom held Rin tighter. They had until dawn. Then everything would change. The station's artificial dawn was 5 hours away, but for Tom, the night already felt like it was ending. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. Rin lay curled on the cot in his tiny quarters, still trembling beneath a blanket she didn't remember. Crawling under, her fingers gripped his old work shirt like it was a lifeline. Tom sat nearby, elbows on knees, mind racing like a ship entering orbit too fast. Every breath she took reminded him why he couldn't let her be taken. Every sound from the corridor made his heart jump. He had seen a lot in his time systems fail. Crews panic, people thrown out for less than what she'd done. But this was different. She hadn't lashed out. She hadn't hurt anyone. Her mind had just called out. That was the part no one seemed to understand. It wasn't an attack. It was a cry. A desperate, unfiltered scream from a soul that had never been allowed to be loud before. And now the same people who had ignored her for years were ready to lock her away for it. Tom knew the law. Technically, they were within their rights. Unauthorized. Psychic emissions. Violation of security protocol. Potential AI contamination. The words were always so clean, so clinical. Like they weren't talking about a child. Like her tears didn't mean anything. He looked at her again. Her face was peaceful now, but not safe. There was nothing safe about where she'd come from or where she was going. If he didn't do something, and so he made a choice. He pulled out his cum unit and pinned a contact he hadn't spoken to in years. Annika Zhao, a pilot with more favors owed than most starship captains could count. She answered gradually, her image flickering on the cracked screen. Tom, she said, squinting. You're calling me at 03 because I need a ship. One that doesn't ask questions. One that can vanish. She sat up straighter. You're smuggling something? Someone? Annika went quiet. Her eyes studied him. This is about that girl. The one defense flagged. They're coming for her at dawn, he said. Not to help her, to erase her. I won't let that happen. Annika rubbed her face. You're insane. Maybe, he said. But I'm not wrong. She sighed. I've got a freighter fueling at Dock 3. It's scheduled for a grain run, no passenger log. If you get her there before shift change, I can gust your signal. Thank you. One condition, she added. Don't make this a one-way trip. If you're going to run with a plan. Don't just vanish into the stars. She deserves better. He nodded, ending the call. Then he turned back to Ren, now half awake, blinking slowly in the dim light. They're coming, she whispered. I know. She sat up, clutching the harmonica close to her chest. Will it hurt? Tom knelt in front of her. Not if I have anything to say about it. We're leaving, Ren, you and me. Somewhere they can't touch you. Somewhere you can be loud. Somewhere you can be. She didn't answer right away. Then, with a soft voice, she asked, Will there be trees? Tom smiled despite the fear clawing at his chest. Yeah, kid, real ones. With gold leaves in the fall, I promise. He packed light, just the essentials. One duffel bag, a coil of tools, a data chip with everything he'd saved, her drawings, her readings, a copy of her medical logs. Not just to remember, but to prove. To someone, someday, that she had been more than the file they tried to bury her in. They moved through the lower decks, silent and swift. No alarms, no guards. Just the low thrum of engines and the hum of fate turning quietly behind them. Rin held his hand the entire time. Not like a child hiding behind a protector, but like someone choosing to walk beside. A storm dot they were close to corridors from Dock 3 when the lights changed .red, a siren. Not loud, but enough someone had noticed. Tom cursed under his breath, pulling her closer. Don't stop. We keep going. Footsteps echoed behind them. A voice barked commands, orders to stand down, to surrender. Another few seconds and they'd be caught. Rin looked up at him, heart pounding, her eyes glowing faintly. Should I stop them? She whispered. Tom stopped. No, he said fiercely. No more hurting yourself to survive. You're not their weapon. You're not anyone's. He grabbed her hand and ran around the final corner. The dock bay door shimmered into view. Annika's freighter was already powered up, its side ramp waiting like an open mouth, and standing. At the bottom of the ramp was a single figure, a woman with silver hair and tired eyes. Annika. She held out her hand. Let's go. She called. Behind them, the guards turned the corner. Tom lifted Rin into his arms, sprinted the final meters, and jumped. The ramp closed. The guards slammed into the door, a second too late, and in that breathless moment, as the ship detached from the station and vanished into the cold dark beyond, Tom knew they had made it out, but this was only the beginning. Asterisk, the stars stretched like silver, veins across the black as Annika's freighter, the Wayfarer, slipped past the jurisdictional zone and into the unregulated corridor known as the Silent Divide. No patrols, no listening posts, no borders. It was a lawless stretch of space perfect for ghosts and fugitives. And now, perfect for them, Rin had not spoken since they left. She sat near the viewing panel, knees drawn up, the harmonica pressed to her lips but silent, not a note played. Her eyes didn't blink often. She stared out at the void like it held an answer she didn't yet know how to ask for. Tom tried not to watch her too much, tried not to hover, but something inside him ached with the weight of her silence. Not the broken kind, but the waiting kind. Like the calm before a storm too large to name, Annika guided the ship manually, her eyes flicking between instruments and shadowed space. You do realize, she said at last, You just made an enemy out of one of the most powerful security branches in the inner colonies. Tom exhaled. Yeah, I'm counting on it. She glanced at him. Why? Why her? You could have walked away. Tom's eyes didn't leave Rin, because everyone else did. Annika nodded quietly. Then we make it count. But space does not forget. And the galaxy doesn't take kindly to those who break its rules, especially not rules that keep dangerous secrets in cages. Barely 12 hours after their escape, the Wayfarer picked up a transmission, encrypted, top-level clearance. Traced through a dozen decoy satellites. Meant to be seen. It was a warning. A fleet had been dispatched, not warships. Not yet, but enough. To box them in. Enough to isolate them in the dark and wait. Tom stared at the message. It didn't say, return the girl. It said, surrender the asset, not a name. Not a person, just an asset. Annika's fingers hovered over the navigation screen. If we punch through the mineral belts, we can reach Sala 5. No Federation presence. Lot of alien-run communities. They might shelter her. They'll follow, Tom muttered. And they won't stop next time. They think she's a weapon. She's not. Then prove it. And that was when the second message came. This one wasn't from defense. It wasn't even from Earth. It was from a relay beacon Rin had touched on the station days ago, just once, out of curiosity. Her mind had left a mark, a signal, a kind of psychic imprint. And something had answered, a voice old, crackled. With interference, but familiar to RYN. It said her name, not the name she'd been given by a handler, her real one. The one no human should have known. The one she hadn't heard since the cages. She stood Tom, and Annika turned at once. Rin was glowing now, softly, not like a star, but like memory. Her skin pulsed with pale lavender light, and her eyes shimmered with tears. They're calling me, she said. Not the people chasing, the ones who knew us, the ones who hid. Tom stepped forward, slowly. Who are they? She closed. Her eyes, my people. Not dead, not destroyed, scattered. They didn't all vanish. Some found places to wait. Annika stared at the readout. The signals coming from the edge of the divide. Beyond the drift line, that's uncharted. No, Rin whispered. It's forgotten because it was meant to be. Tom's heart thudded. If we take you there, will they protect you? She looked up at him, trembling. They'll protect me, but if you come, they might think you're like the ones who took us. They won't know your heart. Tom nodded, kneeling. Then I'll show them. Rin touched his face with both hands, fragile, warm, glowing. You are the first human I've ever trusted. If they hurt you, I'll scream again. I'd rather you sing. And then, as if on cue, the harmonica lifted to her lips. One soft note played, just one, but it traveled. Through the hull, through the wires, through the very air. The ship responded. Lights flickered. The AI went quiet, and then another signal responded. A harmonic tone, deeper, older. They were close, but so was the fleet. Red dots filled the radar. 5 ships. Closing fast, Annika swore. They're going to intercept us at the drift line. Tom stood tall, jaw clenched. Then we don't let them. Rin moved to the console, her hands hovering above the interface. The system pulsed under her like it recognized her touch now. Like it had missed her. She looked at Annika. Let me help. Annika hesitated. You sure? Rin's voice didn't tremble this time. Yes, I'm not afraid of my mind anymore. And when her fingers touched the console, the ship jumped, not in speed. In awareness, the system reconfigured, thrusters realigned, shield harmonics reshaped. They surged forward, past the traps, through the dark, dancing between the stars like fireflies on the run. Behind them, the fleet gave chase, but the girl who had once been silent, was now guiding them, not with violence, not with destruction, but with memory, with light. And with every breath she took, she was rewriting what it meant to be human and alien and alive. They crossed the drift line as the void changed, not in color or light, but in feeling. The stars grew quieter, their twinkle dulled like reverent eyes watching something sacred pass. Even the hum of the freighter softened as though it too understood. They were no longer in a place ruled by human laws or mapped by Federation drones. This was the edge of memory, of exile, of something older than either race wanted to admit existed. Rin stood at the bridge's viewport, both hands pressed to the glass, her eyes wide not in fear, but in awe. Before them, nestled between two ancient asteroid fields, was a shimmer. Not a planet, not a station, a fold. Like space had been wrapped, hidden and woven around something delicate. Rin breathed out a sound that made Tom's chest tighten. Home. But there was no celebration waiting, no arms outstretched, no golden gates. As the ship drew closer to the fold, it stopped. No command. No thrusters. Just stillness, like the air around them had thickened into memory. And then the voice came again, not through speakers, not in language. Through the heart you carry. Her, but what are you? Tom staggered, clutching the console. Annika went pale. Rin turned toward the center of the room, where a ripple of light formed into shape. Not a person, not really. A presence. Pale and vast and watchful. Tom stepped forward. I'm the one who stayed, he said, steady but quiet. The one who saw her and didn't look away. You're human. And human stole her voice? Tom nodded, pain flickering behind his eyes. Yeah, we did. We stole a lot more than that. But I gave it back, not by fixing her, just by listening. There was silence. And then Rin spoke not to Tom, but to the presence. He didn't ask for power. He gave it. The ripple deepened, as if it considered. You wish to leave her. Here? Tom looked at her then, really looked. The glow in her skin. The weight gone from her shoulders. The breath in her chest, no longer afraid to fill her lungs. And it broke him a little because he knew he was not part of this place. He was the stranger. The exile Mel. I want her to be free, he said softly. Even if that means I walk away alone. Rin stepped forward. No. She said, it was not a child's voice anymore, it was full, clear, steady. I choose him. The ripple wavered. Why? She turned to Tom and smiled with a quiet so deep it pulled tears from the corners of Annika's eyes, because he saw me before I could see myself. The presence lingered for a long, long time. Then the shimmer parted. A path opened. Not into space, but into Green Dot Mountains. Mist, trees so old they bent from remembering. Waterfalls that whispered instead of roared. And in the distance, others. Like her tall, radiant, walking barefoot on light. Home. But she didn't move forward alone. Her hand reached for Tom's. He stared at her, unsure, trembling. I don't belong there, he said. She shook her head. You belong wherever someone is brave enough to love you. He took her hand, and together they stepped into the fold. Behind them, Annika watched. She smiled through tears she would never admit were falling. Go, she whispered. Be something the galaxy forgot it could be. And then the fold closed. The fleet never found them. The logs of cargo, Bay 12, were erased, but the story remained in whispers, in myths. In the tune of a harmonica sometimes heard, near the edge of Federation space, a song that no one could trace but always made people pause. A melody made not of war or conquest, but of a bond between a broken girl who found her voice and a tired mechanic who refused to let her be forgotten. A story not of weapons, but of healing. Story not of power, but of choice, a story that echoed. Through time and stars with a quiet, unshakable message, humanity is not what it destroys. Humanity is what it saves,